The Young Comedian's Audiobook, Chapter 2, Part 3, Uncle Ralph. I'd gotten the letter from Carol. I missed her a lot more than she missed me. I was on my own and feeling blue. Jack was off shoveling gravel for his dad at 50 cents an hour. I got my Schwinn bike from the back of the garage and rode to an afternoon showing of It Came from Outer Space at the Crest Theater. My mom surprised me when I came in by telling me to take a shower and put on some nice clothes. Your Uncle Ralph is going to pick you up in an hour. Uncle Ralph? Why? My mom had changed out of her usual house dress into something nicer, which she often did when Uncle Ralph was coming. This time it was a pink two-piece afternoon dress she had seen modeled while we had lunch at Bufham's department store. He wants to talk to you, I guess. She gave me a funny look, and I knew something was up. What about? I asked. Oh, just go and change, she said. I did as she said and thought about my Uncle Ralph, who I liked very much. But his wanting to talk to me sounded ominous. My mom was acting strange about it, too, like it wasn't something just casual. My uncle had something big to talk to me about. Oh, hell, I thought. Maybe somebody has cancer, and they thought it would be best for him to break it to me. I finished dressing and sat down and waited for him, drinking a knee-high orange crush. My mom disappeared somewhere, so I couldn't ask her any more questions. While I waited, I thought about Uncle Ralph. Uncle Ralph was a few years younger than my dad. He was rugged-looking with a steel-gray buzz cut, left a little long at the sides, heavy black eyebrows, and a strong aquiline nose and chin. He looked like the tough, cool character Mike Nomad in the Sunday comics. Mike Nomad was often shown in a turtleneck sweater, sneaking around the docks, tracking down spies or smugglers. The only photo we had of him was on the piano with my mom's other family pictures. This one was in a small silver frame and showed a much younger Uncle Ralph wearing his traditional gray turtleneck and standing on a dock between a sailboat and a submarine. It was unclear which one he belonged with. He was athletic and liked throwing the football around the backyard, which my dad, also a long-ago high school football player, caught easily, and which I ran after hopelessly, flailing my arms. He never made me feel funny about it, and tried to give me little pointers like putting my fingers along the stitches when I threw. My dad just watched, having put in his own 2 months trying to teach me to sink a basket. Ralph had played football when he was at Poly, the same high school I was headed towards, and had gone to SC for a year before he dropped out because of the war. Uncle, he sighed, staring down the neck of his lucky logger. I could see that this wasn't something he wanted to talk about either, and was steeling himself for it. You want one of those cigarettes, kid? He pointed to the box. I think it'd be okay. I wondered if he had seen me slip the Balkan Sobrani in my pocket, and wondered if he could see its outline there in my breast pocket through the cotton of my T-shirt. I realized he must be nervous too, and now I wished he would just get to it. No thanks. Miles Davis played, and progressive jazz noises lilted around the apartment like invisible cool fog. And across the street I could see waves breaking on the beach on that side of Ocean Boulevard. At last he leaned forward with a sigh, as though he were about to lift something really heavy. At last he leaned forward with a sigh, as though he were about to lift some really heavy object, like he'd put an extra 100 pounds on that barbell in the corner. I wasn't sure he wanted to try it. So what's this about you hanging out with some weird kid? Weird kid? I felt as though I'd been punched. You mean Jack? Jack, yeah. He said the name distastefully, as though it were the name of some food he didn't like. Doesn't he have long hair and dress funny? Oh, yeah, he does. So what? His big black eyebrows that usually looked rakish and adventuresome were lowered as he leaned toward me and asked in an accusatory Perry Mason voice, "So don't you spend a lot of time with him in your room?" He paused, giving the question more weight. With the door closed, the room became suddenly hot and stifling. It seems amazing to me now, but at that second I really had no idea what the hell Uncle Ralph was getting at. He was insulting my best friend. He was insulting me in the process, but the exact dirty nature of the accusation was going right over my head like a Brooklyn Dodgers fastball, the kind I never had a chance of hitting. "Sure," I said, feeling sweaty. "We keep the door closed because of the noise." "The noise?" He looked even more troubled. "Noise is that. What the hell kind of noise you making you don't want people to hear?" "Well, not that we're making, although we did make a lot of really weird noises, it was true. But that wasn't the problem. The noise from the outside," I said. "Cars going by and stuff. Mom using the Mixmaster." "The Mixmaster?" "Yes, it goofs up Jack's tape recorder." The frown came even further down. The intense gray eyes narrowed. His mouth was a tight line across his tough, chiseled face. I was sitting across from Mike Nomad, about to beat the crap out of a commie spy. "Your friend has a tape recorder?" His voice rose. "What the hell are you recording?" "Our comedy show. The Banyan and Taylor comedy show. It's really funny, Uncle Ralph." "What?" He looked confused. "Like Spike Jones or Bob and Ray." "Spike Jones," he said softly. A slow smile of wonderment crossed his face. I could see relief coming over him, traveling from his buzz cut down to his lace-free moccasins. "You mean like Stan Freberg?" Exactly like Stan Freberg," I said, with relieved excitement. He was getting it. "Stan Freberg is the greatest. He's our idol." It was true. Stan Freberg's records were the coolest, and I mean cool comedy, not warmed over Red Skelton comedy. Progressive jazz type cool, like Miles Davis on Uncle Ralph's Amazing Hi-Fi was cool, like Billie Holiday, and turtleneck sweaters and button-down shirts and Playboy magazine were all cool. He took a chug of his Lucky. "Are you kids any good?" he asked. "We think so." I described our Harlem Globetrotters routine. He listened and smiled. "So, since it's a radio, the audience thinks your guy is really running on top of a globe?" "I get it. The power of your imagination." I was beginning to remember why I liked Uncle Ralph. He was truly cool himself. I remembered seeing a book by Ray Bradbury, my favorite science fiction writer, next to his 33 1/3 RPMs. "Our tapes are funny," I told him. "Maybe you'd like to hear one." I saw that Uncle Ralph had a nice reel-to-reel tape recorder as part of his hi-fi setup. I might, but..." He shook his head and laughed, taking another swill of beer. "We still got a problem with your mom and dad. They're worried about you." "Nothing to worry about," I said, leaning back. Now we were men of the world together. "They worry too much." They do. But I've got a solution, and I think you're going to like it." Over the next half hour he told me his idea to save my soul in my parents' eyes. I had to admit his idea was a real gasser. A woman walked in through the front door. Apparently she had a key because she let herself in. "Sorry, I didn't know you had company," she said with a sultry voice, and put a six-pack of some foreign beer down on the table. It was one of those foreign beers he liked with a bullfighter or a parrot on the label. He introduced me to her as Mona, which he later shortened to just Moan. She was a knockout, about 15 years or so younger than him. in white toreador pants and a blue and white polka-dotted blouse. She had tied in a knot under her breasts, revealing her tan midriff. She had big, jangly gold earrings. Her hair was black. There was a lot of it, in big curls that fell past her shoulders. She was tallish, standing on really high, thick-soled, open-toed shoes, and most astonishing to me, she had a tattoo. I had never seen a woman with a tattoo in person before. This was a tiny unicorn down on her ankle with a horn pointing up her leg. "You boys having a discussion?" she asked, cracking open one of the beers, sitting down with it and crossing her ankle over her knee. Yeah, we were," said Uncle Ralph. He reached over and patted her tan ankle where the tattoo was. "It wasn't about girls, was it?" "Oh, yeah, in a way it was," he said. "I was just telling Steve he needs to join a fraternity." She laughed. "You're kidding, right?" "No, not at all. I want to get him into Centurion, my old fraternity." She saw that he was serious and stifled her laughter. "He's just a kid. He is going to Poly in a couple of weeks." "Wait, no, really?" she asked. "They've got fraternities in high school?" "At Poly they do." He went on to tell her that Centurion had started in 1935, and my dad had been a founding member. I didn't know that. "It'll teach him values," he said. "It'll teach him to drink beer and chase pussy," she said. "Hey," he said softly, nodding in my direction, and gave her a dire Mike Nomad look. "Whoops!" She put her hand with its lacquered red nails to her mouth. "I mean to chase girls." They talked some more about it while my head swam. It was a little hard for me to track any subject with Moan in the room. She was the sexiest woman I had ever been in the same room with. To me, she looked like one of the Miss Universe contestants on the floats the sailors push down Ocean Boulevard each year. At last, Moan turned and asked me directly, "What do you think, Steve? You want to join a fraternity?" I don't know yet," I said. "It's all new to me." Afterwards, that night, it really hit home what Uncle Ralph had thought, that I was queer, that Jack and I were queer. The whole notion hit me in the gut like a ball of Alka-Seltzer fizz. Uncle Ralph was over it now, but that he even thought such a thing made me want to upchuck. Queerness, homos, pervs. Queer was the worst thing you could call a guy. Me and Jack? Jack was no queer. I knew I was no queer. We had never talked about queer things, never thought queer thoughts. We had never even touched each other, except maybe to hit one another on the head, Three Stooges style, a little nose-twisting, eye-poking, yuck, yuck, yuck. Not the kind of pervish fondling and kissing Uncle Ralph must have meant. As far as I knew, I had never even met a homosexual, except, there had been Russell Masterson in the 8th grade, who had offered to hypnotize me. We went to his room. He had a magic set and a telescope, which were interesting. He sat down on the bed and he tried to hypnotize me. He had me close my eyes while he crooned, "You're getting sleepy now. You're getting sleepy now," over and over. I sat there with my eyes closed, trying to play along, but nothing happened. Mostly I was conscious of Russell's really bad breath and the kind of funny body odor he had. I think his mom might have rubbed his chest with mentholatum. I made my breath go in and out slowly, and when he asked finally, "Are you asleep?" I lied to him and said, "Yes." Then he asked me to touch myself. I was so embarrassed for him that I didn't even laugh or get up and punch him. Instead, I pretended that I was a Civil War soldier from a past life. "It's 1863, I said. I'm a Union private." "Really?" said Russell, surprised. "What do you see?" I shouted, The Rebs are coming! The Rebs are coming! We gotta get out of here! Oh, man! They spread that fellow's guts all over the meadow!" And some other stuff from the Red Badge of Courage, which we were reading in our English class. I jumped up, bumping Russell out of the way, and stumbled around the bedroom, my eyes still closed, until I crashed into a big plastic skeleton that was part of Russell's magic set. I opened my eyes, then pretended to be freaked out by the skeleton. "What the hell happened?" I asked, getting the skeleton arms off me. "Was I really hypnotized?" Russell looked at me suspiciously and said, "You were asleep." I said, "No, I wasn't asleep." I shook my head. "It didn't work. Nothing happened. You said you were going to hypnotize me, and I just sat there, and then suddenly here I am with a skeleton." "You don't remember anything about the Civil War or anything else?" "No, I don't remember anything about the Civil War or anything else. This was a big fake. Nothing happened." "I think you were asleep," said Russell. He had the option of either believing me that I didn't remember anything, or that I had faked being hypnotized and knew he had asked me to touch myself. We settled on a theory I was a bad subject for hypnosis and might behave unpredictably if we ever tried it again. I went home shortly after that. We hardly ever talked again at school. We may have both made it a point to avoid each other. I sat there in my bedroom that night with this horrible realization coming over me, the sort of sad pity I felt for Russell Masterson with his secret desire to make me touch myself, the way Russell always looked different to me afterwards, as though I could detect some subtle difference in his face, his walk, even his medicinal smell. All were tainted with a kind of sad pervert aroma. The way that I thought about Russell, was that the way that Uncle Ralph thought about me? And even worse, was that what my dad thought too? Oh, geez, no. I lay there in the dark, feeling as if there were a giant stone on my chest. I knew it wasn't so, but hanging around Jack made it appear to be so. It was something to really dread. The weight of the imaginary stone on my chest seemed to increase, so that my hands, feet, and head might at any second squish out the sides like when Wile E. Coyote was crushed by a boulder. I knew what my feelings about Jack were. He was the funniest guy I had ever known, and I was funnier than I'd ever been when I was around him. There was a whole side of myself that didn't come out with other people. We were comedians. That was all. Even if Jack and I were the furthest thing in the world from being queer, I was afraid that somebody, anybody, might think that awful thing. Just a little bit. That was unbelievably bad. I sat up suddenly, throwing the weight of the imaginary boulder off me. It seemed like my hands and head returned to normal size and were not going to explode. I was going to do what Uncle Ralph suggested and join a fraternity. This is the end of The Young Comedians, Chapter 2. Remember that The Young Comedians by John Stacy is available as a Kindle edition and in paperback from Amazon Books.